What exactly are the qualifications for Neera Tanden to run the world's largest economy's budget and be instrumental in setting regulatory policy? I'm not saying she's an idiot. I mean, she's a smart woman. I don't agree with her. I think she's vile. I know she's threatened people on social media, but she's not an idiot. But mostly the Center for American Progress writes reports, white papers that are sanitized by Wall Street and their donors from Wall Street and foreign governments. So why exactly was Neera Tanden placed at OMB as a director? And you really, once you really get into it, you realize either Joe Biden and his team were simply not thinking at all when they did this, or this was an intentional move to basically give a middle finger to one Bernie Sanders. So I'm going to read to you my piece that I wrote and published earlier. By the way, you can share the tweet so we can get this around social media a little bit more. Headline: What were they thinking? Neera Tanden and Bernie Sanders inevitable collision course. A lot of the discussion around the Center for American Progress CEO Neera Tanden's appointment to run the Office of Management and Budget has revolved around her years of menacing Twitter activity, for which she's feverishly already deleting over 1,000 tweets. Daily Beast broke that she's already deleted over 1,000 tweets. Her role as Hillary Clinton's top political loyal soldier, if you recall, WikiLeaks showed that that's how she described herself, as Hillary's loyal soldier, and her history of championing cuts to entitlement programs, the virtues of for-profit health care, and hoarding money from Wall Street and dubious foreign governments via CAP. But there's been very little discussion about how Tanden, if confirmed as Director of Office of Management and Budget, will effectively serve when one of the top functions of the OMB director is working with the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Budget Committee. The Senate Budget Committee, of which will have Bernie Sanders either as the chairman or the ranking member, depending on the results of the Georgia Senate runoff elections. Meaning, if Democrats retake the House, Bernie will be the chairman of the Budget Committee. If they don't retake the House, Bernie is the ranking member. Quote, what were they thinking? A progressive insider with ties to Bernie Sanders told Status Coup. How did they possibly pick somebody whose main interface in the Senate would be Bernie Sanders, who's done all she can to ruin Bernie Sanders politically? And before I go on, I just want to kind of give you a behind the scenes. You know, listen, in journalism these days, it's very tough to get people on the record for a whole host of reasons. You, as the reader/viewer, have to decide whether you trust me or you trust other journalists when reading anonymous sources to know there's a reason that they're keeping them anonymous and that these sources are not, janitors. They're people who actually are close to the subject of the story and, know what they're talking about. The New York Times, Washington Post, most of their journalism is anonymous sources. Doesn't always mean it's not true, but you take everything with a grain of salt. It's based on whether you trust the outlet. But I will tell you, for this story that I did, which I worked on all day yesterday, it was particularly hard and harder than most stories I've reported to get anyone to go on the record. As soon as you text somebody, as soon as you get on the phone with sources and you mention Neera Tanden, it's like they get indigestion because not many progressives, most progressives have either been harassed by her and her Twitter troll army over the years, have been directly threatened by her. I'm not talking about violence, but, just political threats. So most people, and I quote, one person said, I just can't deal with the agita. I can't deal with the agita of Neera and her army. Another person told me, I don't have it in me to go to battle with Neera Tanden. Been there, done that. So I just want you to know there's a particular reason. I mean, we got one person on the record, but there's several anonymous sources because people, I wouldn't say necessarily are afraid of her, but people are just like, I just can't deal with this. It's the holidays. There's a pandemic. I don't want the drama of going on the record against Neera Tanden. So just wanted to give you that as a caveat. What were they thinking? A progressive insider with ties to Sanders told Status Coup. How did they possibly pick somebody whose main interface in the Senate would be Bernie Sanders, who's done all she can to ruin Bernie politically? And what that means when he's saying their main interface is, I'd say 75%, 80% of the job of the OMB director is working with Congress. You're working with the Ways and Means Committee in the House, which is chaired by Richard Neal, who is like Neera Tanden, never knew a donor and special interest and Wall Street banker he didn't love. But in the Senate, your main connection, your main working relationship is with the Senate Budget Committee chair, who happens to be Bernie Sanders. So either Joe Biden and his team didn't know that, which I find hard to believe, or they did know that, and that's why they put her there as a giant FU to Bernie Sanders. I go on. For progressives inside and outside of Washington, D.C., Tanden's animosity towards Bernie Sanders has bordered on obsessive hatred over the last 5 years, targeting Sanders, his supporters, and progressive journalists, including me, during his 2 presidential campaigns and political revolution. From Red Scare attacks suggesting Sanders was Vladimir Putin's preference over Hillary in 2016, to Center for American Progress's editorial arm, Think Progress, pushing the narrative that Sanders was a faux populist and hypocrite once he became a millionaire due to his book sales, to Tanden spearheading the political hit squad against Sanders following his accepting an endorsement from Joe Rogan, which, by the way, Joe Biden tried to get on Joe Rogan's show as well, to playing a critical role at framing Sanders' political movement as racist and sexist. Tanden was a one-woman social media super PAC against Sanders from 2015 through the end of the 2020 primary. And this is key. I spoke with a former high-level official from the Center for American Progress, not a low-level person, this was a high-level person, who requested anonymity to avoid Tanden's wrath. He put it more bluntly, telling us, in 2015-2016, Center for American Progress was a wholly owned subsidiary of the Hillary Clinton campaign. The staffer added that the think tank under Neera Tanden operated as an unofficial policy and messaging shop for the Clinton campaign. A former high-level official for Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign, who requested anonymity in order to speak freely, reacted to Tanden's appointment at OMB and potentially working relationship with Sanders in the Senate with outrage. Quote, "This would be the last person. This person went out of her way. This wasn't just policy disagreements to attack Sanders. This is an intentional slight by President-elect Biden, not just on Senator Sanders, but the entire progressive movement." David Sirota, former speechwriter and advisor for Sanders' 2020 campaign, agreed that Tanden's appointment as OMB director was an intentional move by Biden to antagonize Sanders, tweeting that Tanden's looming collision course with Sanders was no coincidence. And I put his tweet where David wrote, "It's not a coincidence that they're putting Neera, the single biggest, most aggressive Bernie critic in the United States of America," well, other than Lloyd Blankfein, specifically at OMB, while Sanders is a Senate Budget Committee ranking chair. Matt Taibbi also opined that Tanden's appointment was an intentional snub towards Sanders, calling it a creative fuck you. Excuse me, swear jar. Leave your super chats demonetized. But another source who's had dealings with Sanders for years told Status Coup that Tanden's appointment was less of an in-your-face middle finger to Bernie and more a representation of the out-of-touch nature of the corporate Democratic machine. Quote, "They were oblivious to it, that Tanden would be working closely with Sanders," the source said. "It's insane. Like, are they even looking at what the job is? They don't do executive action at OMB. It just amazes me of all the jobs they could have given her. Did anyone even consider what that relationship would be like with Sanders?" On Tanden, Larry Cohen, board chairman of the Sanders-aligned Our Revolution, told Status Coup, "I think the broader question is, what is the economic strategy, or is there one, for the incoming government?" Adding that Biden and, if confirmed, Tanden need a strategy that emphasizes higher paying jobs, renewable energy, and spending money at volumes domestically like we've been showering the Pentagon with for, quote, military adventurism. Quote, "She's a loyalist. That's her qualification." A progressive activist who, like many, has had tense encounters with Tandens over the year, told Status Coup. The source, who asked to remain anonymous to avoid further agita related to Tanden, agita was my word, added that in their dealings with her, Tanden never offered any creative ideas related to policy or budgeting. This source has had dealings with Tanden on joint projects. Quote, since when was the Office of Management and Budget a brain trust? The source continued, dismissing the department's role in passing and executing neoliberal policies of the last 3 decades. It's just functionaries. The former staffer that worked for Tanden at Center for American Progress told me, this is the Democratic Party swamp in action. The former staffer at Tanden's CAP told me, adding that nothing in Tanden's background would qualify her to understand budgets aside from being a generic policy person, which is a dime a dozen in Washington. Quote, she's built a very powerful empire there that is really a patronage machine for the professional Democratic establishment, the former CAP staffer said. She's built a constituency within the Beltway among the paid professional left. It's no surprise they're circling the wagons. If Tanden as OMB chairman and Bernie as either the chairman or ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee are ultimately destined to clash, it remains to be seen whether Sanders will play ball and not challenge her confirmation. Sanders' silence thus far may represent an overly optimistic, what many progressives would say naive, hope that Biden will heed his public campaign to be appointed labor secretary. Thus far, the president-elect has provided no tangible signals that he'll grant Sanders a White House parking pass, much less name him labor secretary. But days after the Tanden announcement, there's been no public response from Sanders, leaving progressives and perhaps more importantly Biden waiting to see if and when will Bernie Sanders get mad as hell and not take it anymore. To me, the key aspects here is not so much about Neera Tanden. I mean, I don't think I need to explain to you why, A, she's not the right choice, really, for any position in an administration, but even more so, she's not qualified for it, and even more so, this is a middle finger to progressives. But to me, it's less about Neera Tanden and more about what can you expect from Joe Biden. Because the pick of Neera Tanden, again, I'm not naive. I don't think you should be either. I don't think I actually disagree with one of the sources who said they just weren't thinking. Of course they were thinking, and they intentionally put her there. They could have put her as a member of the National Council on Economics, just a member. They could have put her as a senior advisor. They could have put her working with Kamala Harris. They could have put her in a variety of different roles that does not interact or have anything to do with Bernie Sanders. They put her at OMB when, as the former staffer who worked at the Center for American Progress told me, as others have told me, Neera Tanden has zero experience on budgeting. Kind of a key detail, right? If you're going to run the Office of Management and Budget. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.